You are listening to the Screen to Screen Selling Talk Show hosted by Doug DeVitri, your source to increasing sales, productivity, and the customer experience. In each show, we will sit down with world-class thought leaders to discuss latest trends, innovative concepts, and ideas to keep you ahead of the curve using the latest technology. Welcome back to the show. Very special guest today, my good friend Peter Shankman, who is traveling the world. I guess he's home now on his way to the Philippines. Peter, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Sorry about the chest cold where I kind of sound like Mae West, but other than that, it's all good.
Peter, what I love about your work is you're straight to the point. There's no BS. You tell it like it is. And I'm afraid that there's a lot of noise out there. And then really when it comes down to serving customers with technology, I think of you because who's going to tell it like it is? So when we get down to looking at the customer experience and really technology as the primary driver, what do you see the trends, or maybe not just the trends, but what do you see leaders need to, questions leaders need to ask in order to get relevant with technology?
I think what leaders need to understand about technology is that the technology actually doesn't drive the business. The customers drive the business. And so before they start asking questions about technology, the best thing they can do is start asking questions to the customers, as in, what technology are the customers using?
Yeah, and so if the leader doesn't want to use the technology, but then the customer does, will the customer go elsewhere, or do you find that the customer will try to kind of mold themselves into the model that the business is using?
So 50 years ago, if you wanted to change banks, you had to visit your bank probably 4 or 5 times. If you were a man, if you were a woman, you had to bring your husband, right? So today, if I want to switch to TD Bank from some other bank, I simply go to TD Bank's website and there's a little button that says switch to us. And in like 2 clicks, I'd move my entire family fortune over. So the customer is in control more so than ever before. We're in a customer economy. If CEOs don't see that, then what winds up happening, simply put, is that the customers will go somewhere else. Look at newspapers. Newspapers aren't dying because of a lack of news, the same way the Stone Age didn't end because of a lack of stone. Newspapers are dying because people are finding different ways to get their information. I still love the Sunday Times, but that's once a week. The rest of my time I'm listening to podcasts as I run in Central Park or run down the West Side Highway, or run wherever I am. That's how I get my news. I've chosen to get it through podcasts, through audio updates, things like that on my headset, because that's the only time I have. So I go to places where that information works to my advantage, and customers are doing it.
Well, I really want to go back to the point that you made about switching banks, that you can do it right from the website and do it 2 clicks. You don't have to actually walk into the physical location. You can do it right from the website.
Correct.
What percentage of the time would you say that leaders don't think that way? They just think that they have to come into the bank and it becomes an opportunity to try to repair that relationship when it might already been damaged too much that it's too late.
I think the biggest problem is that, we don't bother. Again, customers, CEOs sit up there in their ivory towers. They don't necessarily listen. So the biggest thing that they can do is that they can listen to their customers and walk downstairs, sit in the call center, right? Be on a call is the easiest way to do it. When I worked in America Online, they forced us to be on calls. Once a month, we had to listen because that's how we were able to learn what our audience wanted.
Yeah. And so let's talk about this technology and accessibility, right? Mm-hmm. How it's so easy for me to send you a link just like that, right? Then now we can talk not just face to face, but now screen to screen. What percentage of the leaders out there are still having trouble with being that accessible to not just the customers, but maybe it's the stakeholders, maybe it's their leadership team, or maybe it's the front line who maybe isn't sure which direction and needs kind of that guidance to keep moving forward?
I think a lot of them, they are scared. They're a little scared that they. I give out my cell phone number in every speech I give, right? And I think that a lot of them are afraid. What I find is that, again, it isn't that bad. You're going to find the majority of customers, when they have the ability to listen to you or have the ability to connect to you, they don't necessarily bother you that much. 99% of the time that customers reach out, they don't need a resolution immediately. If I'm sitting on the tarmac and I see a giant thunderstorm in front of me, I pretty much know it's a giant thunderstorm. That's why we're not taking off. I don't need to call United or tweet United and get a response. What I do need is to just be acknowledged. I need for the pilot to say, hey guys, we're sitting on the tarmac for an hour and a half because of the weather. Because if I don't hear that, then in my head I'm thinking, okay, we're obviously a wing just fell off or something. So a lot of times the CEOs who are worried about accessibility, they don't even realize they're not even going to be bothered that much. To put it another way, guys, you're not that important.
And do you think because of the fact that maybe a CEO is accessible, that the belief is that they will get 100 phone calls and 100 messages? I think I read the other day where I think that the average executive gets 30,000 messages in an average year's time, which is significantly more than it was in the past. Do you think that
I get probably 30,000 messages a month, but yeah, I mean, I believe that, but again, it comes down to how do you manage your time? How's time management working for you? I spend a good chunk of my time on email, but I can do it when I'm walking down the street. I can do it when I'm waiting to take off. I can do it whatever. So I think that there's a bigger issue than that. I think it's that CEOs are worried that, or leaders are worried that they might not hear what they want to hear. And when I look at that, is that's actually the best thing in the world, because if you do hear what you want to hear, if you don't hear what you want to hear, then that gives you the opportunity to fix it.
So what you're saying is that they don't want to be heard, or that they
don't necessarily want to get
going to say more than being accessible.
Yeah, they don't want to necessarily get the answers they're not hoping for, because in this country, every quarter they're going to report back to their shareholders and stakeholders. Their fiduciary responsibility, especially public companies, is to make a profit. But the problem is that if they keep focusing on making a profit over the next quarter, they're not focusing on this quarter century, and they're not listening to customers who tell them the direction. So they're kind of wasting their time. It's frustrating.
So what would you recommend to be a resolution then?
You can start listening and start being more accessible without giving up your entire life. I think that again, it's not hard to do. You just need to understand that there's a better way to do it. Again, and that could start with just starting simply. Maybe once a day you're going to go online and read what the public is saying about you, and implement small little things one by one. How's that? That takes maybe 5 minutes out of your day. Everyone has 5 minutes. That shouldn't be that hard.
Well, I think, what do you think about a conversation or maybe a meeting that's going to take an hour, right? I don't know who came up with that rule that a meeting is going to be an hour every single time that you said it. How would you suggest if a leader wanted to be accessible, how can they establish maybe some guidelines so that if we are going to have a meeting, it's going to be straight to the point, it's going to be brief, but I'm going to acknowledge the fact that I listened to you?
I take the majority of my meetings no less than 15 minutes, or no more than 15 minutes. If you can't tell me what you need to do in 10 or 15 minutes, then you need to get better at that, right? So for me, it's really about making sure the person I'm meeting with understands that they have 15 minutes and they can tell me what they need to tell me in 15 minutes. But if I'm interested, they can have more time. But so what does that mean? That means be on time. That means understand that my time is valuable. And if you're asking for something from me, I'm happy to give it to you. Just listen up.
So it's not so much about the technology, but it's the process behind the technology, which, looking at making that a part of the culture.
No question about it.
I wonder how you would do that. Does that start from the top by following some of the best practices, or does that kind of start at the bottom with the customers?
I think it starts from both. I mean, I have clients who understand that our meeting is going to be 5 seconds or 15 minutes or whatever, but they're going to get every possible question they have answered. And if they don't, I'm going to answer them afterwards or whatever, but we're not wasting time, and also the majority of our meetings can be held online or virtual or whatever it is. They don't need to be on face-to-face over lunch. I mean, what a waste of time that is. If I could get something in and out in 5 seconds, to me, that's much more valuable than having to sit down. Oh, let's do this, let's do that.
Well, and I probably don't, as far as looking at research, I'm just, don't have a specific number yet, but I just wonder, would love your input on it, is what percentage of organizations are structured in a way that their meetings go way longer than they probably should? I don't know.
There's that great quote, meetings will continue, or what is it? Morning meetings will continue until we find out why no one's being productive in the morning. People are idiots, and businesses tend to work the way they worked 50 years ago. And so if you can get above that and figure out a way to beat that and try something new, that usually wins the game right there.
Yeah, interesting. Multiple departments, sales, marketing, customer service. How do you tie that all together so that it focuses on the customer experience?
You know what pisses me off is that someone invented this rule that said no one's allowed to talk to anyone. Why can't you just walk over or if you're in marketing, why can't you take someone in engineering to lunch for a day? Go buy them a burger. Ask them what they're doing. Get information straight from the source. Why are you afraid to do that? What's the worst possible thing that can happen? You're going to learn something, and that'll come in handy. Why wouldn't people do that?
Yeah. I don't know. Is it because they're not compensated, as the value chain, or not compensated?
I think if you're not compensated, that means that you have a big. If your only desire to do it is out of compensation, then you have a bigger problem, and that is that you're not in love with the company and you're not thrilled with where you're working. If you're not doing that, go get a better job. What is it? Zappos pays people $3,000 to quit after 3 months if they're not happy. I think more companies should do that.
What would be one probably best thing that you could recommend based off of the trends that you're seeing, where now we'd have more data about customers than we ever have before? Now we have accessibility, more tools, and we have time to implement. What would be that one thing you could recommend that maybe would start at the top, would start this chain reaction, which would change the way the company operates to really improve the customer experience?
I think the CEO needs to understand that you get the customers you have by being awesome to the customers you want, and that if they focus on the employees, making the employees happy, the customers will usually be happy by default.
Simple enough.
It really is not rocket science. I mean, hell, rocket science isn't even rocket science. It's math.
Well, Peter, I love your approach. I love the way that you think.
Happy to help.
That's what drew me to you. That's what drew me to Shankminds. It's kind of like going into it, I was wondering what was I going to get ideas on how to improve my business, but it was really more improving myself, because that's where it's got to start.
You are listening to the Screen to Screen Selling Talk Show, hosted by Doug DeVitri, your source to increasing sales, productivity, and the customer experience. In each show, we will sit down with world-class thought leaders to discuss latest trends, innovative concepts, and ideas to keep you ahead of the curve using the latest technology.
Are you ready for more meetings in less time with less expense? Screen to Screen Selling has answers. Screen to Screen Selling is the fastest way to increase sales, productivity, and the customer experience. Screen to Screen Selling is a mindset before it becomes a skill set. Let's look at your beliefs.
Or even like join.me.
Receive access to upcoming episodes of the Screen to Screen Selling Talk Show, special announcements, and insider resources. devitri.co/screen to screen. Order Screen to Screen Selling from 800-CEO READ, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Books A Million, and McGraw-Hill Education.